Well, leftist media are falling over themselves to try and paint Donald Trump's win in the New Hampshire primary as a loss. The ABC insists that he was angry during his New Hampshire run, saying the primary exposed some weakness in the former president. The Sydney Morning Herald criticised American voters for choosing Trump's chaos over rival Nikki Haley's normality. And The Guardian slammed Trump's cruelty, calling him a schoolyard bully. The Guardian writes, like many bullies, Trump's ostentatious show of strength was motivated by inner weakness. Haley did well enough among independents to raise red flags for Republicans in the general election. It's like no one in the progressive left learned their lesson from 2016. The more the media seems to attack Donald Trump, the more his popularity soars. Well, joining me now, Sky News contributor Kosha Garda and National Senator Matt Canavan. Welcome to you both. Matt, how did you interpret Trump's New Hampshire win, and do you think that it's only a matter of time before Nikki Haley has to withdraw?
Look, I think it's pretty hard to see Donald Trump not being the nominee here. He has pretty much record-breaking leads in the polls among Republicans. I don't know. I just think it's almost all over now, seemingly. I mean, in terms of what Nikki Haley decides to do, who knows? I suppose there's perhaps other benefits in her staying in the race, but you really can't see anything but Donald Trump taking the nomination here for the Republican Party. And he's obviously tapping into a level of frustration that exists with institutions in America. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Someone up for trial, someone that's been indicted on different issues, is leading in the polls by this much. And I think hopefully it's a bit of a wake-up call to all the political class to start taking the issues that average people across the world are concerned about seriously. They want to protect borders. They want to make sure their own economies grow. They don't want to see their jobs move offshore to other countries that aren't complying with radical climate action. Just deal with the issues that people want, and then you'll get support among them. You don't need any tricks behind the scenes to do that.
Kosha, the pressure among some Republicans who support Trump, the pressure on Nikki Haley to step down, to withdraw, seems to be heating up. She is under pressure. She seems to be resisting it at this point and standing firm. Do you think she presents a good alternative to Trump should a black swan event happen?
It's very hard to see how that would be the case. I mean, there are any number of reasons for why she's persisting. She is under a lot of pressure because the GOP has finite resources, money, et cetera, and the more this continues, it's sort of diverging or it's a diversion tactic away from the general, which everybody wants them to get on with. The reason I say it's unlikely is because her constituency, at best, really is independents. There was a lot of discussion that came about that, how in New Hampshire she had a good showing with independents. There's some question about how many of them are true independents versus Democrats in disguise, or even other people in disguise just register as independents. But be that as it may, in a primary she may do well with independents, but in a general, there's no evidence that says those people will continue to go with her against the Democrat. And you cannot run as a Republican nominee without having the core Republican base on your side. So the independents are sort of like icing on the cake, but you have to have the cake of the Republicans. And the point is the Republican Party is being remade in the image of the populist movement, the MAGA movement. That is what is ascendant, as evidenced by Trump's performance in 16, 20, and right now. And she just doesn't have that constituency behind her. So it doesn't make sense really how she would be the natural heir apparent to Trump in the case of a black swan event.
I mean, she points out that she's come so far. Her polling originally was only 2%, and, now she's the last one standing. Matt, the Democrats also seem to want Trump to be the Republican nominee. The theory is, at least they say, that Biden can beat Trump. The polling doesn't show that, though. But how do you think Nikki Haley would go against Joe Biden?
Look, it's a bit hard to say because I don't think Nikki Haley has been subjected to the blowtorch of a national political campaign. So I think when you do sort of polling of a candidate like Nikki Haley, who's probably not known that well to many Americans, the results you get are not going to be a true representation of what might happen after months of political combat. And no one really does political combat more confrontationally than in the United States. So, there'll probably be a lot more coming, I suppose, to Nikki if she stays in the race, and will that affect her polls? It's a bit hard to say if she go to general, but I agree there with Moksha that look, it's hard to see how Nikki Haley captures the now populist nationalist part of the Republican Party. She's almost harkening back to the George W. Bush era, which seems like a long way back in the rearview mirror now. Donald Trump really is ascendant within the Republican Party and represents a very different type of conservatism: anti-war, anti-foreign entanglements, strong security of the borders, obviously an America First agenda. So, look, I don't see any other viable option for the Republican Party but to go with Trump, and it'll be a contestable, difficult election, but it's probably their best hope of a change of administration.
Look, let's have a quick look at the Middle East. Kosher, we know that Qatar has been acting as somewhat of a broker between Israel and Hamas, but the Qatar Foreign Ministry is reportedly fuming over Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments in Israeli media, where he's criticised Qatar for its role in harbouring the terrorist leaders. He's also criticised the United States for not putting enough pressure on Qatar to release the hostages. Doesn't Israel have a point here, Kosher? These countries are providing safe haven to the terrorist leaders and their billions of dollars.
They certainly do, and you ask a very legitimate question, Sharri, and the whole apparatus of Qatar has actually been a slow brewing story. The fact that it's quite underappreciated and underreported on even well before October 7th, and now post-October 7th just puts a sharper spotlight on it. Often the answer to these things, not always, is money. And if you look at that, it's a very rich country. They've been very successful in establishing a pretty entrenched lobbying apparatus, funding apparatus within the United States government, certainly, and probably other governments like it around the world. There was an FBI case last year where they seized data and files of the CEO of the Brookings Institute, which is a very influential, preeminent think tank in Washington, D.C., because allegedly he was doing some improper lobbying on behalf of Qatar. I think it's since been dismissed, but that gives you a signal. And then there's been other allegations. I think Fox News just reported 3 days ago that there's some sort of spy ring, Qatari spy ring that they've caught, where they're trying to put pressure on U.S. legislators that are trying to actually be tougher on Qatar and trying to get them to turn over Hamas or declaring the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, et cetera. So if you look into those things, it may start to give a piece of the answer as to why there isn't more pressure being put on Qatar, despite their obvious role in housing Hamas.
Matt Canavan, just before we go, I'd love to quickly ask you what you think the coalition's response should be to Albanese's proposed tax cuts today. Do you think the coalition should support Labor's new tax package?
Well, number one, we should continue to pursue the stage 3 tax cuts as promised. Promises should be delivered, and so I continue to support that. In terms of today's announcements, look, obviously I'll have to get across the detail, but I'm sure Liberal national parties will always support lower taxes on Australians. And today's announcement, where the government has ripped away thousands of dollars of promised tax cuts from Australians, just demonstrates and highlights that you will always pay higher taxes under a Labor government.
So just to get that straight, so you think Labor's proposal today, the additional tax cuts that they're offering for low-income earners should go ahead, but the high-income earners and the stage 3 changing of the tax brackets should remain as well?
Well, as I said, I've got to get across those details. It's been announced in the last few hours. There's been a lot of speculation the last few days, but I've only had a few hours, so let me do that. But as I say, I'd always like to see lower taxes on Australians, but I don't believe in this approach of punishing some Australians to help others. This is not the way to pursue tax reform. Doesn't incentivise aspiration. We've got to find a way where we can lower taxes for all Australians, whereas the Prime Minister today has raised taxes on over 1 million Australians, and I definitely oppose that.
All right. Matt Canavan, Kosher Garda, thank you both so much.